Hello, this is Sarah. I'm going to read you Cindy's tale today, which goes like this. When I arrived at the upscale restaurant where Mom was having a family dinner, there was not a seat available. She sneered, "Maybe you'd be better off at the diner around the corner," to which my family responded with laughter. The owner of this establishment was subsequently revealed to them. All right, let's leave. I heard the familiar ping of an email notification as I was at my kitchen table, browsing through my phone. I would normally disregard it. These days, the majority of my crucial communications are via phone calls or texts. I hardly use my old email account anymore, but something forced me to check it. I froze when I saw the sender's name, my stepsister, Jessica Morrison. It has been nearly 12 years since I last heard from her. By the way, my name is Cindy. Now that I'm 34, I can honestly say that the 12 years that my family kept quiet were the happiest years of my life. However, seeing Jessica's name in my email reminded me of everything I had tried so hard to forget. To be sure I wasn't dreaming, I opened the email and read it twice. To Cindy, I hope this email reaches you in good health. I'm writing to let you know that Mother has arranged for the whole family to get together for a family meal at a restaurant. We would like to invite you to this event. All of the family members will get the chance to catch up and exchange information about their lives and accomplishments during the meal. Naturally, we would respect your choice if you would rather not go since you haven't accomplished anything noteworthy in your life. If you intend to attend, do let me know. Warm regards, Jessica. I laughed out loud when I read the final line. If you haven't achieved anything significant in your life, typical family, typical Jessica. They always believed me to be a total failure. Apparently, they continued to do so 12 years later. Here's some backstory for you. My stepsister is named Jessica. She would have been 18 when we last spoke, and she is currently 30. She is the daughter of Richard Morrison, my stepfather, who wed my mother when I was 16. Kevin, her brother, was 20 years old at the time and is currently 32. My mom married Richard 3 years after my biological dad passed away when I was 13. Everything in my life went to crap at that point. I changed from being the lone child to the outsider in my own house when Richard came in with his 2 children. I was never liked by Richard, and his children did the same. I didn't belong, and they made it obvious right away. And my mom essentially put me under the bus because she was so anxious to make her new marriage work. She put all of her energy into her new family and lost interest in me. Jessica was emailing me rather than phoning, and I understood why. I stopped communicating with them and changed my phone number around 12 years ago, immediately after I graduated from college. I was tired of their nonsense. The irony is that I could see why my mother had requested this family meal. She wanted to showcase her beloved stepchildren's incredible accomplishments. As the family failing and the warning about what happens when you don't live up to the Morrison standards, she wanted me to be there. I simply stared at the email for around 5 minutes. I had the need to remove it and act as though I had never seen it. However, there was a peculiar side to me, the petty side, I suppose. I was curious to see what type of performance they would be doing. I replied back, "I'll be there, Jessica." Cindy, tell me the specifics. Before I could alter my mind, I pushed send. My brain was spinning from how quickly she responded. She must have been waiting for my response while seated at her computer. I appreciate your quick reply, Cindy. Before you have supper at the restaurant, Mother would prefer that you come see her at home. The ancient house where you were raised is still occupied by her and your father. They want to talk to you and find out what's going on in your life. Mother's phone number is here. To schedule the appointment, just give her a call. Your house tour will be followed by the restaurant supper. Warm regards, Jessica. I spent a lot of time staring at the phone number. The number of my mother. Before I chickened out, I grabbed up my phone and contacted her, even though I hadn't done so in 12 years. Hello. Although my mother's voice sounded older, it was unmistakably hers. Hello, Mom. Cindy is here. After a little silence, Cindy. How are you doing, honey? Oh my gosh. Her tone was unexpectedly kind and loving. I was surprised by it. Mom, I'm doing well. I received an email from Jessica regarding the family meal. Yes, please. I'm delighted you wish to attend. Sweetheart, it's been too long. We need to catch up on a lot of things. Tell me everything that's new in your life. That would be nice, too. Are you free on Saturday, Mom? We could eat lunch and chat if you could stop by the house at noon. We may then talk about the supper at the restaurant. That sounds ideal. See you on Saturday. I smiled as I hung up the phone. Not because I was content. I wasn't gullible enough to believe that this would be a touching reunion. I was grinning as I was prepared to go along with them and understood precisely what game they were playing. They tried to make me feel like trash and brag about their successful children. All right, let them believe they had triumphed. Allow them to believe that I was still the same terrified, impoverished 22-year-old who had left their home empty-handed. Saturday arrived sooner than I had anticipated. That morning, as I stood in front of my closet, I selected the ideal ensemble for my small charade. I went for a basic black sweatshirt, a pair of trousers, and old shoes. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that would indicate I was wealthy. I wanted to appear just like the failure they anticipated. Instead than driving myself, I phoned a cab. It was also part of the strategy. It took around 20 minutes to go to my childhood home. It featured the same beige siding, front porch, and garden that my mother had always taken such pride in. After giving the cabbie my money, I approached the front door. It swung open before I could knock. "Cindy," my mother exclaimed as she stood there grinning at me with her arms out wide. Even though she had more wrinkles around her eyes and grayer hair, she still looked like my mother. I nearly forgot why I was actually here for a moment as she gave me a firm hug. "Please come in. Everyone can't wait to see you." My entire family was inside when I walked in. Richard was standing by the fireplace, staring at me with the same patronizing attitude he had mastered 12 years prior. Kevin was in the armchair and Jessica was seated on the sofa. Both of them were looking at me, clearly pleased by my attire. Richard responded, well, as he approached to shake my hand. "Little Cindy, you look exactly the same." "Thanks, Richard." I spoke in a neutral tone. Jessica got to her feet and embraced me awkwardly. "I'm glad to have you here, Cindy. You appear at ease." She was clearly trying not to smirk. Kevin simply gave me a nod from his seat. "So," Jessica remarked as she sat down again, "what made you arrive in a taxi? Do you not own a vehicle?" I gave a shrug. "At the moment, my automobile is in the shop. Fix problems. You are aware of the situation." Jessica murmured something in Kevin's ear as she leaned over to him. Among the phrases I heard were "probably too embarrassed" and "piece of junk." Kevin gave a snort. I simply grinned nicely and remained silent. "Well, let's sit down and catch up," Mom exclaimed, slapping her hands together. "I've made lunch for everyone." We sat at the dining room table, the same table where I had supper when I was a child, when Mom and I were the only diners. I had the impression that I was now a visitor at someone else's home. "So," Mom remarked while presenting the meal, "I want to share all that Jessica and Kevin have been doing. Both of them have achieved great success. She put on a lot of effort, and boy did she. Jessica was promoted to senior marketing coordinator at a business I had never heard of, according to my mom. At a nearby auto dealership, Kevin was reportedly killing it in sales. As if they were managing Fortune 500 firms, she talked about their accomplishments, relationships, and residences. Jessica nodded in agreement as she sat there grinning smugly. "It's been a really good year for me," she stated. "The promotion came with a nice raise, and I'm thinking about buying a house soon." Mom said, "That's wonderful, honey, and Kevin, tell Cindy about that award you got at work." Kevin was all peacock-like. "Yes, 3 times this year I was named Salesperson of the Month. I'm a natural, according to my manager." I nodded and made all the right impressed noises. "Wow, that's amazing. You guys are really doing well." Richard smiled that condescending smile. "We always knew these two would make something of themselves. They've got that Morrison drive." Then Mom turned to me, and the whole table got quiet. "So, Cindy, what about you? What have you been up to all these years?" I took a deep breath and tried not to laugh. "Well, compared to Jessica and Kevin, my achievements are pretty modest. I work in a restaurant. Nothing too exciting." I deliberately didn't mention which restaurant. Let them think what they wanted. Mom looked almost embarrassed for me. She quickly changed the subject back to Jessica and Kevin, and they started talking about the upcoming restaurant dinner. "We've reserved tables at Lumiere," Mom said proudly. "It's the most expensive and prestigious restaurant in the city. We had to book weeks in advance." When I heard that name, I almost choked on my water. I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside, I was dying. "Lumiere," I said casually. "I've heard of that place." "Oh, it's incredible," Jessica said, not even trying to hide her smugness now. "It's where all the successful people go. They have a strict dress code, too. Only people in decent clothes are allowed in." She looked pointedly at my outfit as she said it. "I'm sure you'll find something appropriate to wear," Mom said, trying to sound supportive, but clearly doubting it. I nodded seriously. "I'll do my best." The rest of lunch was more of the same, them bragging about their lives and making subtle digs at mine. I played along perfectly, acting impressed by their achievements and humble about my own situation. Finally, after what felt like hours, I made my excuses and called another taxi. As I waited for it to arrive, Jessica walked me to the door. "You know, Cindy," she said, "I'm really glad you came today. It's good to see that you're doing okay. I mean, not everyone can be super successful, right?" "Right," I agreed. "I'm just happy to be invited." The taxi pulled up, and I hugged everyone goodbye. As we drove away, I looked back at the house and saw them all standing in the window, watching me leave. I gave the driver my address and settled back in my seat. The hardest part was over. Now I just had to wait for the restaurant dinner, where the real show would begin. As we pulled into my driveway, I looked up at my beautiful house, the one they had no idea I owned. I looked at my gorgeous car parked in the garage. I thought about my restaurant, my business, my success. And then I went inside and started laughing. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, replaying the entire conversation from my parents' house. Jessica talking about the strict dress code at Lumiere. Mom bragging about how expensive and prestigious it was. Richard's condescending comments about talent and success. They had no idea. My family had absolutely no idea that for 5 years now, I had been the owner of the very restaurant where my mother was planning to hold her family meeting. The irony was so perfect, it was almost unbelievable. I couldn't stop thinking about how I'd ended up owning Lumiere. The whole story was so crazy that even I sometimes couldn't believe it had actually happened to me. Let me back up to when I was 22, fresh out of college. I had graduated with a business degree on a full scholarship, something my family never acknowledged. I'd worked my ass off in school, partly to prove myself and partly just to stay away from home. I barely came back for holidays, and honestly, my mom never really invited me. Anyway, when I graduated, I made the mistake of thinking things might be different. I moved back home, planning to stay just long enough to find a job and save up for an apartment. But the whole family, Mom, Richard, Jessica, and Kevin, made it clear they weren't happy about my return. The final blow came about 2 weeks later. I was job hunting during the day and trying to stay out of everyone's way in the evenings, but nothing I did was good enough. "Cindy," Mom said to me one morning over breakfast, "I think it's time we had a talk. Your presence here is making everyone uncomfortable. Richard feels like you're disrupting the family dynamic we've built." "I'm barely even here," I protested. "I'm out job hunting all day." "That's not the point," Jessica jumped in. "I need your room for when my friends come over. It's weird having you here." I looked at my mom, waiting for her to defend me, to tell Jessica that this was my home, too. Instead, she just pointed toward the door. I packed my stuff that week and moved in with my friend Sarah from high school. It was humiliating, but Sarah didn't ask questions. She just gave me her couch and told me to take my time. I found a job pretty quickly, administrative assistant at a restaurant called Bella Vista. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The owner, Mrs. Chin, was this tough older woman who ran the place with an iron fist, but she was fair. She taught me everything about the restaurant business, probably without even realizing it. I worked there for 5 years, slowly moving up from admin to helping with scheduling, then inventory, then working with suppliers. Mrs. Chin started trusting me with more and more responsibilities. I was basically her right-hand person by the end. During those 5 years, I saved every penny I could. I lived in a tiny apartment, drove a beat-up car, and rarely went out. I was determined to never be in a position where someone could kick me out again. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call that changed everything. "Miss Roberts, this is David Walsh from Walsh and Associates. I'm calling about your aunt, Patricia Roberts." I hadn't talked to Aunt Patricia in years. She was my dad's sister, and after he died, we'd kind of lost touch. I knew she lived alone in this big house across town, but that was about it. "I'm sorry to inform you that your aunt passed away last week," the lawyer continued. "I'm calling because you're mentioned in her will." I went to the funeral. Of course, it was small, just me, a few of her elderly neighbors, and some people from her church. My mom's family didn't even show up, which didn't surprise me. After the service, Mr. Walsh asked me to come to his office. "Your aunt left you everything," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "The house, her savings, her investments. It comes to about $700,000 total." I just sat there, staring at him. $700,000. I'd never seen that much money in my life. "She included a letter for you," Mr. Walsh said, handing me an envelope. I opened it with shaking hands. Aunt Patricia's handwriting was shaky but clear. "Dear Cindy, I know we didn't stay in touch after your father died, but I never forgot about you. I heard from some mutual friends that your family treated you poorly after your mother remarried. I always regretted not reaching out, not being there for you when you needed someone. I hope this money can give you the fresh start you deserve. Make something of yourself, sweetheart. Your father would be proud. Love, Aunt Patricia." I cried reading that letter. Someone in my family had actually cared about me, and I'd never known it. I sold the house through a realtor and started planning. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the money: open my own restaurant. I'd learned so much working for Mrs. Chin, and I had ideas about how to do things differently. I found the perfect location, an old restaurant that had gone bankrupt. The building was solid, but it needed a complete renovation. I spent months planning every detail, working with contractors, designing the menu, hiring staff. I called it Lumière, which means light in French. It felt symbolic, like I was finally stepping out of the shadows of my family's rejection. The first year was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I was the manager, the accountant, the marketing department, and sometimes even the hostess when someone called in sick. But slowly, we built a reputation. By year 2, we were turning a profit. By year 3, we were booked solid most nights. By year 5, this year, Lumière was the most exclusive restaurant in the city. We had a waiting list for reservations, and our private dining room was booked months in advance. The best part? My family had no idea. They'd cut me out of their lives so completely that they had no clue what I'd been doing for the past 12 years. They still thought I was the same scared, broke girl who'd left their house with nothing. I called my assistant manager, Marcus, to confirm something that had been nagging at me. "Hey, Marcus, can you check our reservations for next Saturday night? I'm looking for a booking under the name Morrison." "Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Private dining room, party of 12. Linda Morrison says it's for a family reunion." I hung up and started laughing again. The irony was just too perfect. My family was going to have their big celebration dinner at my restaurant, where they planned to show off their successful children and humiliate their failure of a daughter. Saturday evening finally arrived. I dressed in the same simple style as before: plain jeans, a modest sweater, and comfortable flats. I wanted to look exactly like they expected me to look. I drove to Lumière in my gorgeous Mercedes, but I parked it in the back lot where my family wouldn't see it. Then I walked around to the front entrance like any other customer. Before going in, I had a quick word with Marcus and the hostess, Emma. "Remember, don't let on that I own this place. Just play along with whatever happens." They both nodded, trying not to grin. My entire staff knew about tonight's plan, and they were all excited to see how it would play out. I walked through the front doors of my own restaurant and immediately spotted my family. There were about 12 people total: Mom, Richard, Jessica, Kevin, and what looked like extended family from Mom's side. The moment I walked up to their tables, everyone went quiet. They all turned to look at me, taking in my simple outfit with obvious satisfaction. Well, Jessica said, not even trying to hide her smirk. "Look who made it." She leaned over to Kevin and whispered something. I caught the words "even worse than last time," and they both snickered. Mom just looked at me and shook her head slightly, like she was disappointed, but not surprised. "Hi, everyone," I said cheerfully. "Thanks for inviting me." I looked around the table, expecting to see an empty chair, but there wasn't one. Every seat was taken. Where should I sit?" I asked. The table got quiet again. Mom looked around like she was just noticing this problem for the first time. "Oh," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I guess we didn't." "Well, honestly, Cindy," she continued, "a place like this is really more suited for successful people. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at that diner around the corner." She gestured vaguely toward the street and then looked back at her guests. "This restaurant is for people who've actually made something of themselves." Everyone at the table laughed, actually laughed, like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. They had invited me to a family dinner and then deliberately not saved me a seat. They wanted me to leave, humiliated, so they could all talk about how pathetic I was. Instead, I smiled, a big, genuine smile that seemed to confuse everyone. I raised my hand slightly and Marcus appeared beside me instantly. "Is everything all right, Ms. Roberts?" he asked politely. "Well, Marcus, it seems my family didn't prepare a seat for me at their table." Marcus nodded seriously. "I see. Would you prefer your usual table in the VIP section? We always keep the owner's table ready." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear everyone's brains trying to process what they just heard. I turned to face my family, who were all staring at me with their mouths open. "Well, since I'm apparently not successful enough to sit with you all, I guess I'll celebrate our family reunion from the VIP section. You know, the area reserved for the owner." I followed Marcus to the elevated VIP section, which had the best view in the restaurant. As I sat down, I could see my entire family still frozen in shock, whispering frantically among themselves. About 15 minutes later, Mom and Jessica got up from their table and walked over to me. They both looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Cindy," Mom said, sitting down across from me, "what did that man mean when he called you the owner?" I shrugged casually. "Oh, that I own this restaurant. Have for about 5 years now." Jessica's face went white. "You own Lumiere?" "This Lumiere?" "Yep. Bought it, renovated it, built it into what it is today. It's been a lot of work, but worth it." Mom started sputtering. "But why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say anything?" I looked at her calmly. "When would I have told you? You kicked me out of your house and didn't speak to me for 12 years. You excluded me from your lives completely." "But we were joking around," Mom said, trying to smile. "You know how families tease each other." "Interesting jokes," I said. "I must not understand that kind of humor." Jessica leaned forward abruptly. "Wait, if you own this place, then we don't have to pay for dinner tonight, right?" I burst into laughter, loudly laughing. "Do you want me to pay for your celebratory meal? I was told during the dinner that I wasn't successful enough to be seated at your table." Mom said, "Well, we didn't really mean." "No," I firmly answered. "I don't support anything. You're able to cover your own expenses." They lowered their faces. Mom seemed desperate and Jessica was furious. They returned to their table, and I observed them engaging in contentious discussions with the other members of the family. Their evening had undoubtedly lost its charm. By myself, I savored a nice, serene meal prepared in my own kitchen. As I prepared to depart, I passed their table one more time. I said, "Thanks for a lovely evening," in a kind manner. "I hope you enjoy the rest of your dinner." I went to the rear parking lot, climbed into my Mercedes, and drove by the restaurant's front door at a leisurely pace. I could see my family and relatives jammed up to the windows, clearly envious, as they watched my vehicle. Mom gave me another call a week later. Her voice had changed entirely this time, becoming kind and affectionate. "I wanted to know whether you would want to have supper with me again, Cindy, honey. You know, just family." I answered, "Thanks, but I'm busy," in a kind but icy manner. "Oh, well, maybe next week." "I don't think so, Mom." Kevin and Jessica then began messaging me all the time. They asked me to invest in all of their fantastic company ideas. Opening his own auto lot was Kevin's dream. Jessica was planning to start a marketing firm. I received comprehensive offers from them, and they continued to contact with amazing opportunities. I didn't even think to answer. For weeks, They persisted in attempting via messages, emails, and phone conversations. One day, Mom even came to my restaurant. She remarked, "You're being selfish," as she sat at an empty table across from me. "We must forget and forgive. Begin again." I stated plainly, "I'm not giving you money." She began to sob as she stated, "This isn't about money. Family is at the center of this. You adore me, don't you?" I stared at her for a while. "I love you exactly as much as you loved me when you pointed me toward the door 12 years ago." She instantly stopped weeping. She clutched her purse as her face hardened. "All right," she snapped, "but don't count on us to rush to your aid when you need something." I haven't heard from any of them since she bounded out of my restaurant. That's okay with me. I have my company, my prosperity, and my tranquility. People who just want me around when I can help them are not necessary in my life.